Hello, this is Gwen again. Tonight is Saturday, September the 23rd, 2017, and it's about 10:05 p.m. I had so much fun telling my stories a minute the other day. So this one is going to be called More Stories to Tell. What it is that I'm working on a series of short stories in my head and recording a little bit. But I'm gonna share them with you because just in case I get struck by lightning or something, it'll at least be out in the universe. I'm not really a writer, but I'm imaginative and creative. Most writers take years to learn, and I guess I will learn how to write, really write. But bear with me because these are just stories I made up. What it is that it's based on an overall story, like a macro story and micro stories. And so the macro story, that is the overarching theme, is the battle of good and evil. And it's across planets and the universe. It's across the multiverse. And the manifestation of evil on this plane is people who are classified as white looking. They'll be white physically looking because they're out of contact with the divine goodness to the level that's needed for them to refrain from doing evil actions. They don't have the restraints that most people of color have, as evidenced by what's actually going on in this plane right here. So, what it is that it's a battle of the divine forces, the gods, the goddesses, all of them, as well as angels and demons. If black people were doing all of that stuff, I would make them the bad guys. But they're not, and they haven't been. So the bad guys in this case are going to be the white people because I'm I am coming up with this thought is because it's actually manifesting in front of me. I just tried to find a way to explain it and look at it, and this is my way. There are certain things I won't put on a public forum like YouTube that I won't say, and there's a reason, and there's also a reason why I won't say certain things on YouTube because that's the white people's forum. It belongs to white people. So there are certain things I just won't put there, are things that I won't say. Although I would be pleased if they banned me because I would be so proud. I would shout it from the rooftops. I'd be just tickled, just tickle pink. But really, I don't really want them to find me or even know about me. I just use their platform as a place to store my videos and get a URL spot, sort of like a mini cloud for storage for me to use to point to other black orientated forums. That's where I really want my stuff at. This other for other black people to see. I really don't want the people on YouTube or Facebook or any of the other social mediums to see it. I don't have a Facebook or Twitter account. I might get one at some point, but there's nothing that I have to say that I want white people to see. I I do have things that I can make for general public, but what I'm really focused on is what's going on with my people. So in this case, these stories are on multi levels. It's mixing reality that we're living and fantasy and wishes and all of that. Just fantasy and stories. So the macro theme is that the goddess is on the ropes and the little white gods are trying to create evil and destruction. So the goddess, the overarching goddess of creation, she has encased herself in a chrysalis because the people that were giving her strength have stopped worshiping her and they're worshiping the little white gods. And these gods and such are feeding off of the black people who are the biggest source of nutrients for God because of our strong belief and strong spirituality. So she can't fight to defend us without really opening herself to harm. Only on special needs and circumstances does she step in. but we haven't asked her to help, so she's not helping. She can't. It's against God rules or goddess rules somewhere in there, because the people who nourish the other god are the ones who pledge their belief and belonging to that god. So every time she steps in or gets ready to, he tells her, these are my people, they're my domain, and there it's true. So he gets substance from the people, black people, and he does what he will. And the people that he favors are the ones that look like him, which are not black people. So essentially, he's feeding off of black people and nourishing and passing on the blessings to white people. So the goddess is in a chrysalis encased, and the black people on earth in this plane are oblivious to all of that. The overarching story is called Tales of the Oracle, and it's got subchapters: enemy action, friendly action, the goddess diaries, and divine actions. And those are just subchapters. The story plot is where a person died and this person transitioned to the next level, which is part of being the soldiers in the battle on the metaphysical level. They're fighting evil across galaxies and universes, the black people versus the white people. And right now, they're focusing, are getting ready to focus on Earth, because this is where the battle is coming up next. So the Earth battle is going to be one of the turning points. Right now, the forces are equally matched, with good slightly ahead. Only reason you can tell good is slightly ahead is because if good was behind, then we would already be destroyed, because destruction will be outpacing creation, and thus destruction will have won and creation wouldn't exist. But it's only about two steps ahead of destruction. So the forces of good are creation, and the forces of evil are destruction. So when this person dies and she moves to her next level, she is being introduced to the war council and the war games and the war um, area. So she goes to headquarters. Sorry about that noise. She goes to Forces of Good headquarters, and she walks into the operations center, and she's being introduced to the different workers and positions and stuff. Okay. So that's how she comes in, and that's just how it levels out, and they're explaining it to her. And she goes to various duty stations, and it looks almost like the bridge of a spaceship, except the things that they're using to maneuver things are really holding their hands over a console rather than knobs and buttons. They're really operating with the power of their will, and that's changing, and that's what motivates the travel and mode through time and space. Okay, time means any time and space means any place. And that's the war room and headquarters. They take her to the archives, and then they begin to tell her different stories as the archivist flips through screens and tells her what's happening, what's going on. And so this is how that level of the story begins. And the vignettes under that are the stories that are told as the archivist explains to the new recruit in this battle. Now, previously I told about, I think, the three stories that I forgot the name of them, but I told them. And then this is going to be two more. I'm going to tell the story of called And They Screamed. And then I'm going to tell another story. But this one is And They Screamed. Now, this one takes place on Earth. There's not a specific time where the marauding bandits come and attack a village. These are black people that live in a village, and the marauding bandits, who are white supremacists with guns and rifles, attack the defenseless community. they run marauding in there, much like they did in ancient Europe with the Vandals and the Saxons and all of those. They have already known these steps, and they did much like they did in America with Roseburg and I might be saying that wrong, but in Oklahoma and Florida and many of the black townships that established themselves during and around the Depression, those were the first race riots. And they did that. Not only did those people do that during those times, they also did that to the Chinese. That's why that phrase called take a slow boat to China came about. That's because they raided Chinese townships or Asian townships and destroyed what they made there, and then put the Chinese back on their boat and sent the boat back to China. And so he can take a slow boat to China was a real thing. They put the Chinese back on the boats. That was during the QE. I can't never say that word. It sounds like a horrible word that means something bad, so I won't say it. But anyway, those were those times. So black people weren't the only ones they dealt that to. And it didn't start in America. It actually started in Europe, where the marauding people would go to a village or another township and or city state and wreck it. And they would do all kind of things to the people there, torture them, kill them, take all their possessions, and all of that. This marauding group of barbarians, as they called themselves then too, was attacking this village, and they were mercenary type people, and they were men, and they came to the village, and they came in there and discovered that the men weren't there, just old people, women, and children. And they sacked it. They did every torturous thing they could think of, and they killed everybody. One of the men was getting ready to abuse a female, and after they finished with her, he reached down to take her necklace, and I'll come back to that one. But they were waiting their turn and all of that, and they saw the daughter and they decided to attack her. But the daughter, as he was running to her, he said, why is she coming to me like this, opening up her arms? He said, well, I opened up my arms. And he held her, and he didn't let go until he was done. And he killed her. He said, okay, at least he had fun, so he'll give her a quick death. So he cut her throat. But he thought, they all could hear each other, and they were laughing and gleefully terrorizing and marauding and destroying this village. And they did 1,000 debaucherous and murderous things. And they kept going till everybody was dead, and they were tired. And they were just looting, and they came to the lady, and he came back to the lady and said, oh, she's got a necklace just like my wife. I always wanted to give her another set of this jewelry. And he was reaching and yanked it off of her neck. And he looked around. He said, wow, how dare they have a floor plan just like my house? How dare they have that? And they were looking at him and cursing and all of that, and burning them and all 1,000 things. As they finished up, though, and laughing and cheering each other on, the mist was beginning to clear, and they were seeing flashes of things that shouldn't be there. He looked over to the side and saw somebody that looks like his father, and he says, no, that's not so. But the mist kept clearing, and it was his father, bleeding and bloody and stabbed and messed up. He looked at, what? Why is my father there? He looked over to the side. He saw what he did to his daughter. Well, what was done to his daughter? How? What? And he looked at this necklace in his hand and said, that's my wife's necklace. That looks just like her. And he looked over there at the woman that he had just abused and used. And he said, that is her. That's her face. The rest of her charred body was unrecognizable, but he did see her face. And then he saw that that was his wife that was abused. And he looked around and saw that was his house. And he saw his father and his family. And he saw what he did, and then he screamed. Because he saw the horror of what he did to his family as he was coming out of the mist. and he heard his friends screaming too, and he could hear all the voices of anguish all around there after they realized what they did to their own families. No wonder there was no men in the village. They were the men, and they attacked their own village. And they screamed, and that's all he could hear. The scene fades away, and you can see on the outskirts of the town, the goddess of mist turns around and talks to the goddess of time. And she says to her sister, the goddess of time, okay, it's time to leave these people, as she left, because she put the spell on them to make them attack their own village rather than the village they were intending to attack. They attacked their own families. And the goddess of time says, why do they always think they ought to, that damage should be wrought on anybody else's family? They are what happened to their family. Why should it be anybody else's family? And and they said that because that's where they felt, and they were leaving, and as they walked away you could see village after village of men screaming. And she shrouded the mist and left them in time so that they would perpetually loop into that nightmare where they would never come out. And so that was the name of the story. And they screamed because these people are screaming in horror at what they did to their own families as they thought they were doing it to somebody else. That's the end of that story. Feel free to contact me so you can flesh it out some more, because I didn't tell everything that happened. But yeah, I like that story. So that's how that worked. Now, way I would like for that to work when in headquarters is when you go into the headquarters part. It's like, and this is going to be something that I've not seen anywhere else. So this is a corporate secret, a trade secret I'm gonna divulge. What I want it to be is based on certain characters that are living today. YouTube characters and various political figures. Not political, but social figures. Maybe, but mostly YouTube characters. I would love somebody based on General SETI, and I want him to be a real general whipping up the new recruits and talking just like he talks, even being a voice actor for it, where he's whip them into shape, and the new recruits standing there, and he's got those paragraph long cussing sentences. Okay, so he's actually a general, and when the time comes, he can download an aspect of his spirit into newborn babies, and these babies grow up to be an aspect of his personality in the war. When times are desperate, they can download bits of themselves into real people. I would love to have somebody based on some of the female activists, like even some even and some of the males. I don't think General said he would mind me talking about him, but I'm not sure about some of the females, so I don't want to say their names. But there's some that I'm crazy about. If you ever go to my page on YouTube and see who I sub to, because my subscriptions are public, then you can probably imagine who I think about. I like to see somebody based on the elder. And he would, sit there and talk about folks, because I love watching him talk, especially when he makes a valid and shocking point where he kind of sits back and rocks and smirks at you. Yeah, I said it. Look on his face, priceless. That's priceless to me. So this is how I want it to be. Just about even the women who call themselves, who don't even admit they are warriors. Some of the best warriors in this struggle are females. Never forget the female warrior. We are in a patriarchal society, so she's underrated. But actually, the female warriors are right there, and they won't just stay silent and sit aside. So yeah, to be these characters, some of the characters will be based on some of my favorite YouTube personalities, and they are in the struggle, and they are downloaded aspects from divine beings who are actually in the struggle that I'm imagining. Okay, this is the next story. This story is called The Final Thought. This story is called The Final Thought. White supremacists have been running amok on the planet for a few years. In this story, it's how it begins. And the people were kind folks and forgiving and looking over it and trying to rise above it and make peace and be peaceful, but it wasn't working. And they were just getting more and more emboldened, right and left. Yet they would fight when they're attacked directly, but so much of the time they were, this is black people, that is, black people would uh, fight back when were attacked directly, but most of the times they weren't attacked directly, but through the legal system and the judicial system. And they were just tired, but they were still forgiving and kind and trying to be good people and look above it. But secretly, so many of them were harboring silent rage and hate. They were fighting against being hateful because they didn't like the idea of the hate turning in on them and all the other platitudes that talk about hate and how hate is bad. So they were fought against it. And then the story talks talks about this one sweet, gentle Christian lady who goes to church, who's on the PTA board, on the school board, who does anything she can to help anybody. And she's coming home with a little grocery cart, and she's just dragging it along the street and minding her own business. And some racists rolled by in the car and shouted racial thing at her, words at her, and she still just plodded along and did her business. And she saw them up ahead doing something horrible to a young man and a young lady, and they beat them up and did hard. The boy tried to fight back, but he was outnumbered, and they just went off. They didn't kill the kids, but they wanted to and they tried to. And the lady saw that the young people weren't even doing anything any more than she was. And she said in her heart, she said it in her heart, said, I hate them. I wish they would just die and disappear. In her rage, she said, I wish they would die and disappear. And so they did. She was the last black person on the planet who thought the words die and disappear regarding white people. For that split second, a unified thought among black people happened. And she was the last one to step in on that unified thought. The thought had power. The thought was waiting, and it manifested. All white people died and disappeared. She saw them as they clutched their chest, fell down, writhed in agony, and then died. Died. And then they disappeared. They weren't there. They faded into nothingness. Nothing was there. She was shocked. And then she looked around and says, damn, we got to clean up this mess. Epilogue. Black people are cleaning up the epilogue of the story. Black people roared and then looked around in dismay and looked at the state of the planet and said, we got to work to clean up all of this mess and this pollution and this damage. So we got to get to work. That's the end of that story. That's about 24 minutes. That's all I have to say about those two stories. Okay. Thanks for listening to me. I'll tune in again. If something else come up or something else happens I want to put out there. Okay. Bye-bye.